the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Thought I'd take a look at whether or not they're coming for your car. You probably heard that story about, 3,000 auto dealers signing a letter, opposing the Biden electric vehicle mandate just recently. People aren't buying them. Of course, we got so much money that Congress has put forward. People are saying, well, where are these chargers? The projections say that by the end of this month, about a million new electric vehicles will have been sold in the U.S. this year. Okay, a million this year. And that projection, that's probably a few 100,000 less than it's been projected at the start of the year. And in reporting this, I think it was CNN that was making this claim. They tried to make out that the shortfall, it's not that big of a deal. But then Forbes reported earlier this year that Ford announced it was postponing $12 billion in planned electric vehicle production. Another auto manufacturer, GM, right? They abandoned their goal to build 400,000 electric vehicles through mid-2024. The Volkswagen Group canceled plans for a new $2 billion EV factory in Germany. So when you get these big guns like GM and Ford and Volkswagen saying, well, I don't know, we're going to cancel, these plans, you got to realize this is a pretty big deal, right? And this year, it marks the first year that 1 million of these have been sold, the very first year. But, one of the main reasons for their sales, and I don't know if maybe you drive an EV, I don't know, I'm not, they're basically taxpayer-funded rebates that consumers get when you buy one. It's a pretty good deal. I heard one guy say, hey, you get as much as like $22,500 back, with all the different rebates and tax advantages that you get. But even with the rebates, the average customer, they're not going out and they're not buying the cars. And one of the reasons for that is the question is, how far can I drive in this thing? And what happens when my battery runs low, right? Where are you going to charge these things? Part of the so-called Inflation Reduction Act appropriated $7.5 billion to build charging stations all across the country. And not a single station has been built anywhere in this country using this money. Not a single station. I've seen a lot of free places. If you go to certain places, they'll have free charging. I'm thinking, well, nothing's free. Eventually, you're going to whip out your credit card or your ATM or your wallet and pay for how many watts you're probably charging on that battery. Right now, they want people in these EVs, and there are other problems as well, just the weight of the vehicles. We can talk about that with my next guest. I want to invite to the conversation H. Sterling Burnett. He's the director of the Arthur B. Robinson Center on Climate and Environmental Policy at the Heartland Institute. He's also the managing editor of Environment and Climate News. Dr. Burnett, always good to talk with you. Thank you for being here. Let's start with the numbers. Congress set aside $7.5 billion for charging stations. Maybe you can give us a little history first. Was any of the taxpayer money used to build gas stations at the beginning of the 20th century? And where are we today?
It's numbers, and numbers. Yeah. Look, the whole EV push by the federal government and by state governments is a boondoggle. It is a scam, and a dangerous one at that. I don't know how many of your listeners will remember, but when I was a kid, there was a car called the Corvair. And Ralph Nader basically got it pulled from the market. He wrote a book called Unsafe at Any Speed.
That's right.
It was dangerous. Electric vehicles have caused more harm to people than the Corvair ever imagined it could. From the fires that they start while charging at homes, at businesses, in bus slots. I don't want my children on an electric bus if it's going anywhere, because they have the tendency to do something that cars don't do. Cars may explode in an accident, but they're not just sitting there in front of your house and suddenly burn. Electric vehicles are doing that. And there have been more fires in New York from electric vehicles, that they've been called more on that, than any other artificial source now. So it's crazy. But let's get to the numbers.
Yeah, sure.
EVs make up less than 4% of the sales in any 1 year of all. And when you talk about cars on the road, since, it's a fraction of the cars in the U.S. As you said, gas stations, they're built privately. I want to make money. I build a gas station. Whether I franchise through a major oil company, integrated oil company, or whether I just build it on my own, I put in the tanks, I buy the location or rent the location, and I either make a profit or lose my shirt. We've got about 145,000 gas stations across this country. EVs make up less than 3% of the cars on the road. We have 180,000 EV chargers currently. And the Biden administration says we need at least 1.2 million EV chargers to satisfy a fraction of demand. That tells you something about their range problems. That tells you something about the charging problems. 3% needs approximately 10 times more charging stations than we have gas stations.
Wow.
And I want you to think about this. I've got an EV charging station. It's sitting on the side of a highway.
Right.
Well, your friend went in and he filled up, probably including going in and buying his groceries or going to the restroom or getting a soft drink and filling up less than 10 minutes, and he's out of there and he's able to go 400 miles on a tank.
Yeah, yeah.
At a slow charger, well, you're sitting there for 18 hours. At a fast charger, you're getting a charge of 40 to 80% of full charge in 30 minutes. Okay, so let's talk about the positive. 30 minutes. Well, okay, it's not terrible. But if we've got 2/3 of the cars on the road being electric, think of the lines on the road, because there's not enough room in the parking lot for all these electric vehicles that have to be charged.
That's true.
So it's just backing up the highways at every EV charging station. It is madness. And you know what? We taxpayers are paying for it, not private industry. Utilities are going to be charging for the electricity. The companies that build them are going to be charging to build them. They're profiting, but they're not having to put their money into it. It's taxpayer money. And as you said, and this is the biggest boondoggle of all, Biden got $7.5 billion to build them along the highways.
Where are they?
And there's not a single one built. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been built on has been spent on bureaucracy, but not a single charger has been built yet. They don't exist.
There are a lot of northern states, where temperatures are brutal. I'm thinking of Green Bay, Wisconsin, or the Dakotas, or you just make your way, Maine. You make your way across our country. Battery life diminishes in those temperatures. So, is range going to be an issue? And again, this is early. We're just beginning to create these vehicles. I'm sure they're going to get better. There might be better insulation. There might be faster charging. Are we beating something up, before the horse has kind of gotten out of the stable right now? I mean, should we see how this thing ultimately runs and what kind of developments they make? I
guess I would say, if it made sense, the market would provide it. No one had to convince people to start building gas stations. They saw that people wanted to drive, that vehicles were internal combustion, and they built those gas stations at their own expense, expecting to profit. Yeah. The fact that these have to be built using federal dollars, subsidized dollars, tells you there's no market for it. They're trying to create a market where none exists, absent already generous federal subsidies for the purchase of these things. You've got auto dealers who have cars sitting on their lots for months, EVs. That's why Ford and GM sold a total of 18 electric trucks last year.
Gosh.
I mean, this year so far. 18 electric trucks. Ford loses $60,000 at a minimum on every EV.
Wow.
Sold. It's spread across all your other vehicles. Everybody else is paying for some rich person's EV virtue signaling. Wow. They're not being bought by the poor. Yep. They're not being bought by the lower middle class. It's the upper middle class who want to show that we're holier than thou. And then they complain about the range, or when their truck won't haul things, or they see their houses burned down when they're charging them. Yep. Insurance companies are starting not to say, we'll no longer cover these things. It's madness.
No, well, it's this heavy push, whether you like it or not. Let's get away from fossil fuels. We're going completely green, and they're trying to jam this down people's.
Not green. But it's not green.
No, I know. I mean, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. I mean, just how do you manufacture those minerals, or the elements you need for the batteries? What happens to the waste when it's all done? I mean, there's a lot that goes in behind the scenes as well. Let's revisit this issue again. Always great to talk with you, Professor. Check out Dr. Burnett. You'll find him at the Heartland Institute, and you can learn more by going to heartland.org. I'll be praying for you. Say one for me, okay?